first question. How did you start playing the flute?
Okay, so I started playing the flute because originally I wanted to play piano. So from the time I was really small, I always wanted to play piano. And if I went over to anybody's house and they had a piano, so I was like the worst play date ever. So age 4, I would just sit and play someone's piano. That was it, end of. So, and we didn't have a piano at home. And piano being a very large piece of furniture. So my dad said to me, when I was that small, he was like, when you're older, you can play the flute. And so not anticipating that I would like hang on to that little piece of information in my little 4-year-old fist, right? So I waited and waited, and I would ask all the time. And my mom finally went to the music store to get me a flute, and instead came home with a recorder, because of course you realize like a flute is an investment. And then finally, when I was 12, I registered for band, and there was a lottery for the flute. So I actually had to win the lottery, and it was a huge moment, right? Because I've been waiting since I'm 4 to play the flute. So I did. I won the flute lottery, and that was that. I started playing the flute in band, grade 7 band, and then I begged for lessons.
Great too. Love it. Okay. The second question is, what is your practice routine?
Practice routine is always a warm up. So I have a really set warm up that I like to revisit, because having things that I do play similarly every day lets me feel in my body what needs to adapt, or what is different, or how's the breathing working, or how's this feeling. So I do a low tone exercise to start. Then I do full range scales. Then I do some articulation. So I do a single tonguing exercise that I've done since I was Shelley Younge when I was in high school. I do a single tonguing exercise. Then I do typically an exercise for speed, like a Taffanel Gobert, little, the number 1 or number 2. Then I do my long tones. So I let myself kind of warm up before I do my full beefy long tones. I do my long tones so that I feel like they aren't the first thing that I do, so that I'm really listening to my sound. And so I do that. And then I do my double tonguing workout. And then after that, I do whatever it is that I might be working towards. So, whatever repertoire I'm learning, I always work in a study. So there's always a study that I'm playing, because I think studies are awesome and fun. And yeah, that would be my routine.
Brilliant. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. The best thing you've learned from a mentor?
Okay, well, oh my gosh, the competition is high. I've had amazing mentors. I'll tell you the one that pops up to me right now is that no matter how amazing you are, you're never satisfied. There's always going to be this little part of you that like is just reaching for that little bit more. And I'll just tell a quick story of that coming to mind. So I was very lucky when I was at Indiana University, Jacques Zoon, who is amazing flutist, he now teaches in Geneva in Switzerland, and he's young talent at that point. So he just left the Concertgebouw as principal, and I think he was only 25 or 26, and he was very cute. Anyways, but so he was playing his first recital at Indiana, and we all went, and I didn't even know what to say. It was exquisite. It was beautiful no words. And I had my lesson first thing the next morning, and I wanted to acknowledge, I didn't even know how to say, wow, I really loved your recital, right? Because it felt almost like untouchable. Like I'm not even allowed to say, but I finally, I'm like, I really enjoyed your recital last night. And he said, oh, yes. And he had his little Dutch accent, he's like, I felt like I couldn't get into my sound. And my jaw just hung open. And I was like, oh, pardon? Right? Like I was just like, I've never heard anything so exquisite in my whole life, and that fell short to you. And it was this moment of like, okay, I guess that never goes away.
Mm.
Or, that reaching for always just a little bit more. And it was a really good lesson to sort of make peace with that feeling, right? It's
Right.
like, I'm going to have to make peace with that feeling.
Try to make peace. Like, what do you?
It's been, I guess I hold that. I hold that story from Jacques. I really do, because it was such a profound moment of realization for me, like to hear such a genius express that, and that from that it became such like a human expression. Like that's the human in us, and then if that's his experience, and we all share that experience to somewhat, it made it okay.
That's uplifting. Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
great.
yeah.
Thank you for that. That's really good. Um, what is your favorite music to play?
To
Favorite.
play.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what? And again,
It's
the answer can sometimes be different on a different day. But what I will say is, what I'm enjoying so much right now is I do, at the end of teaching yoga, I do improvisations on alto flute. And I play whatever I want. And this was a huge thing for me right in the beginning. Like I thought, okay, really, to be quite honest, I was trying to get hired by the yoga studios. And so I was like, I have a flute, I'll bring my flute. It was like kind of a hook to get me in there. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do what I said now and improvise something. Oh no. It's like, So, it was all of a sudden I just sort of had plunged myself into this world. But what I find what it's done for me, first of all, is I just use my flute to express whatever I feel in that moment and whatever I want to gift in that moment. And no one is sitting listening to me like in an audition or in this really stressful situation where you feel this almost distance, where you're trying to be a certain way and it's got to be perfect, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it feels like getting back to the expression of music, kind of this just like heart to heart sort of feeling, not to get all cheesy, but I'm also kind of cheesy. So that I would say is deeply fulfilling to me right now. I really appreciate it. As much as I love the classical repertoire and the world, like that has been a really a shift for me, of like very freeing.
Right. Yeah. So you've been doing yoga as a teacher for a while
Mhm.
as well. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, years. Yes, yeah. And
Okay.
I've really obviously coming to it as a musician, uh it's it it's a different perspective, right? And I had to take care of different things. Like I'm not going to load my wrists in an unhealthy way because I need to work, right? Like stuff like that. And just how to move and how to really tailor it towards like a musician's specific needs in some ways. And yeah, so
Makes
mhm.
sense. Nice. Okay. Well, can you share performance advice? So if you're going to a performance.
Okay, so getting ready for performance, my biggest piece of advice. Okay, first of all, practice. That's like level one, right? Practice for your performance.
Mhm.
And second of all, practice your mental preparation. So I would say that that's the part that gets often neglected. It's like we practice, the music, our fingers, and then we don't prepare ourselves mentally. And it's so huge. So I'm always one that says, instead of getting to the performance and you're at the performance and you imagine you're at home. Well, we're not at home. Like you deeply know that. So you can try to think the whole time, it's just like being at home, and it's not. And I find it much more useful to prepare for the performance by, when you're practicing, imagining you're in performance, because you're doing that, conjuring that, imagining from a place of being grounded and calm in your own space.
Yeah.
And that for me is very important preparation. Like I see everything. I see myself walking out on stage, I see the audience, I try to see the lighting, and I really prepare myself for that experience so that I'm not suddenly dealing with the mental load of it, which is huge, right? Without that kind of base also.
That makes a lot of sense. So explore. And this is the last question.
Okay.
Can you tell us something that nobody knows about you, or something that's not flute related? It could be anything.
Yeah, okay. Let me see. I know I'm a pretty I'm a pretty open book in a lot of ways. Maybe, so this might surprise people because as you can see, I'm pretty chatty. And it might surprise people to know that one of my favorite things to do is go on silent retreat, and that I find that like deeply resetting and calming, and that yes, going for 5 days without speaking to anybody is fantastic, and that often surprises people because they don't think of me as being the type, like, and yeah, so there we go. That's maybe a little surprising tidbit.
Thank you. Yes, that was lovely. And very informative. So those are all the questions that we have.
Okay.
Um, that is pretty much it. I look forward to seeing you in person live.
In person, me too. Take care.
Thank
Okay.
you.